In this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at how to identify a variable, numerical coefficient, and constant term in algebraic expressions. It's important to note that each of these are very specific and they have their own definitions. So I'm going to tell you the definition of what they technically are, and then I'm going to give you some hints. So a numerical coefficient is something that can change the letter in some way. It's usually a number that's attached to the letter, and that's your hint, the number attached to the letter. Because if it's attached to the letter, for example down here, the 3 connected to the n, that means that you're multiplying the n and you're eventually going to change it in some way. So the numerical coefficient always changes. The constant term, on the other hand, is constant. It never changes. It's by itself. There's nothing attached to that 2. It will never change. And the letter is always the variable. We don't know what the variable is. We don't know what the variable is, and so it stands as a letter. The variable could be anything, which is why it varies, and why we call it the variable. So, let's take a look at an example in how we have to identify these in a problem. We already kind of did below with 3n plus 2, but let's take a look. What if I had 4t plus 6? Well, what would be the constant term? You're right, the number by itself. There's only one number here that's standing completely by itself, and that is the number 6. So that would be the constant term. What is the variable again? The letter by itself. The letter, even if it's by itself or with another number, is always the variable. And then, of course, the numerical coefficient would be the last one remaining, which is always a number if it's attached to the letter. Numerical coefficient. Now, not all problems will have all three. What if I had something that looked like this? N plus 2. What am I missing here? I have a constant term. I have a variable. Am I missing a numerical coefficient? Yeah, there's nothing here that's connected to the letter's standing by itself. I have a number by itself, which is always the constant term. I have a letter, which is always the variable, but there's no numerical coefficient. What about this one? Here, do you have a constant term? Do you have a number standing by itself? The answer is no. Because you have the variable, the letter, and you have a number connected to the letter, 3, so that would make it the numerical coefficient. There is no constant term. This would also work the same way if I had n divided by 3. This would still count as being connected. So the variable is still here, and I would still have a numerical coefficient. The 3 would be a numerical coefficient, not a constant term. If I added in, though, plus 6, then do I have a number by itself? Yes, so that 6 would be the number by itself, the constant term. This is how to find and identify numerical coefficients, constant terms, and variables in algebraic expressions.